Welcome, this is Jennifer, and I am glad you're here. So today I am doing a video just for fun. Usually I try to focus my videos on a technique and show you lots of examples, but I had some products that I really wanted to use, and I thought they were pretty cool, so I thought I would just go ahead and film it and share it with you. I will have tips along the way for foiling, for die cutting, and stay tuned to the end if you want a few tips on stitching also. But this again is just about creating and having fun. My first two cards are display cards. They're 5x7 and great to give to anyone that you know will put your card on display and appreciate. Now mine are ornament cards, so they have an ornament that hangs at the center. And I will mention other things you could do, so you could change this up and do this kind of design all year long. Now, I used a Spellbinders product to create this project. It's the Spellbinders October Large Die of the Month. I love their clubs. I've always said that they're such a good value and great designs, and this is just another good example of it. Now, this one allows you to create that ornament display card. However, I am not really following the directions that they have on their website. I'm changing it up so it flattens nicely to go into a 5x7 envelope, and I'm also leaving out a few of the elements that they've included. However, you could totally make it how they recommended, and I'll link to their website so that you can check out their video. As I'm creating, I will mention what I do differently. All right, so let's do the top and the bottom of this card. That's really the support that allows it to stand up. You need to cut 4 of this rectangle die here, which actually does the score lines for you, making it very easy. So I cut 4 pieces. Any heavyweight cardstock will work. There are 2 score lines on each end of these rectangles. I'm folding back on the score lines that are closest to the center. This is just so I can take this other die and cut an arch at the top of this rectangle. What's cool about this die is the pieces that stick out on the side do not actually cut. Only that arch or that swoop there cuts. Those pieces of metal sticking out on the side just help you to center it. So you just line that up between those 2 folded lines, tape it in place, and run it through your die cut machine. Here you can see the piece with that little arch cut at the center, and I'll do that with all 4 of those dark blue rectangles. Once I'm done, I can fold along each of the score lines, and remember, the die created those score lines for me, easy to follow. So I fold back on the inside-most score line, and then I fold towards myself on the other score line. And I do that on both sides, on the left and the right, of each of these pieces. Now this is where I go a little different than how Spellbinders does it in their video. I will show you what theirs looks like at the end. Both work really well, totally up to you. And again, I'll link to their video if you want to see that option. Now, this is something also you could kind of do the measurements and figure out how to create without the die set. But I felt this die set really was a good value for what you can do with it and something that you could use all year round. So I was really excited to use it. All right, so I have all 4 of my pieces. They're all done the same way. And now it's time to glue them together. So I'm going to put 2 for the top of our card and 2 for the bottom of our card. Now the easiest way to do this is to put a strong liquid adhesive on these 2 flaps. So these are the little folded flaps we created. Liquid adhesive really works best here. Then you take another one of those and put it right on top. So I'm just going to press it right on top, press it all the way down, and then just line up the corners. Make sure those pieces line up. And that's the easiest way to connect them. Once that is dry, you can let go of it and it'll pop up, which will form like the pop-up element of our card that'll work for display. So we'll do the same thing with the others. Liquid adhesive along the 2 flaps. Take the other element, lay it right on top, press it all down together, line it up along the edges, and then put something heavy on it while it dries. Once those are dry, you can see our 2 pop-up elements that'll go on the top and the bottom of our card. Now for the card base, I have a 5x7 piece of cardstock. It's just a piece of cardstock, not a folded card, but you could do folded if you wanted to. I'm putting adhesive on the back of the flaps on each of these elements and gluing one on the bottom and one on the top. By the way, I'm just putting something heavy on these while they dry. I recommend doing that. These are paperweights, but you could put anything heavy. I'll link to these below. My friend makes them and I think they work really well. but anything heavy. You can use your phone, you can use a die cut machine, your stamping tool, whatever you have. Now I thought it'd be fun to decorate the front of these two little pop-up elements and add some texture and inking to them. You could totally skip this if you wanted to. I cut 2 more rectangles with that same die, and I'm cutting along the inside score lines, so I'm cutting off all of the flaps. Now I will use that same arch die to create the arch on each of these pieces, just as we did earlier. These will just get glued onto the front of those 2 pop-up features. It was just easier to do the decorating on these pieces than the pop-up pieces themselves. I have my Spellbinders Platinum 6 die cut machine, and I'll be using a Spellbinders embossing folder. These embossing folders are great because they're big, so you can use them on slimline cards, 5x7 cards, and more. And here I'm just putting those 2 cut pieces into the folder and running it through the die cut machine. You can use these embossing folders with whatever die cut machine you may have. You just need to follow the manual to determine what sandwich you need. And now I have that fun texture on each of these pieces, but I want the texture to stand out even more. So here's a quick thing that you can do with your embossing folder backgrounds or pieces, and that is to use a brayer to lightly rub ink over the raised areas. I'm using my Tim Holtz brayer, and I have my 2 pieces on a sticky mat, so it stays still as I'm doing this. I'm just lightly rubbing a dark navy color ink on top to get a tone-on-tone effect, and now you can see that textured pattern even more. Another option would be to just take the ink pad and lightly brush it over the raised areas, but I find that using a brayer really is a lot easier and gives better results. All right, so now I can glue both of these pieces onto the pop-up features at the top and the bottom of our card. I really want this card to be strong when it sits on display, so I've cut another piece of cardstock, heavyweight white cardstock, to be slightly smaller than 5x7, and I'm gluing that on the back of the card. This will give it strength, and it'll give us a place to write our message. And now here you can see how that kind of pops up there, and it'll stand nicely on display. The key is either to use very heavyweight cardstock or to layer a couple layers together, and I decided to do both. Now for the ornament itself, this is included in that die set I showed you earlier. You can do stitching on this or skip the stitching. Totally up to you. In fact, you could have anything hang at the center of this card, but the ornament fits really nicely. I'm taping these 2 dies together on a piece of cardstock and running it through my die cut machine. I like that the outline is separate, so if you want to skip the stitching and just have an ornament, you could do so. Now I have cut this from a heavyweight cardstock. If you're using a lighter weight cardstock and plan to do stitching, I recommend cutting 2 identical and gluing them together before you stitch. I thought I'd go ahead and demonstrate that here. It just makes the ornament a bit stronger when you do that stitching. It makes the paper stronger. Now I already did the stitching for this off screen, but if you are interested in how to do the stitching here and the threads that I used, I talk about it at the end of this video. I thought I'd save it for that in case you aren't interested in the stitched elements. I know it's not for everyone, but boy do I like stitching. It's very therapeutic and I think the results are gorgeous. And this one in particular is a pretty quick one to stitch. Now after I did the stitching, I am gluing these little intricate die cuts onto the ornament just to add more detail. This die is included in the set. I also cut a little silver cardstock ornament topper that I glued right to the top of our blue ornament. I die cut a dark navy ornament, just a solid ornament, and I'm gluing it to the back of our stitched ornament. The reason I'm doing this is that dark navy will show through the stitching holes, just giving a little contrast. If you plan to make an ornament that the recipient can remove from the display, it's good to have something on the back of it too, and I'll talk about that with our next card. Now the die set also includes this little string die cut that you can use to hang your ornament in your card. I cut 2 of those from white cardstock and glued them together to make them a bit stronger. You could use real string here so it will swing around more. I will show that with the next example. I'm just going to glue that right to the back of our ornament after I weave that little thread into the hole, just giving it a nice secure spot there. Now there are a million ways that you can add this ornament to this display card. I'm going to show you one here, and then I'll show you another way with my next example. Now I put the ornament string so it is right in that top pop-up feature. You'll get a closer look here in a minute. And I'm centering that ornament in that opening between the two arch pieces. I'm taking a piece of Scotch tape, because it was easiest to do, and sliding it in there so that the string is taped to the inside of that pop-up feature at the top. I'll take another piece and I'll put some more tape back there. I just really want to make sure it's secure. I'm not sure this was the best way to adhere this here, but it worked just fine. Tape worked just fine. Now I'll use my scissors to trim off the excess, and we have our ornament taped to the inside of that pop-up feature. I have a few finishing touches for this card. I have a thin silver glitter cardstock strip and a white cardstock strip that I'm adding to the top and the bottom of the card. I just felt like that pop of white and sparkle really stood out nicely against that dark blue background. For a sentiment on this, I'm using the Spellbinders Glitter Wishes foil plates. I've used this one before in videos. It's a great one with unique holiday sentiments. So we're going to foil this sentiment, but if you don't have a foil machine, you could definitely do a stamped greeting or die cut greeting here. I'm using a piece of tape to create a little hinge along the sentiment that I chose to use for this card. Now I'm taping it close to the edge of my cardstock so I can easily cut it into a cardstock strip. This does come with a die that cuts the sentiment strip, but I thought this was pretty easy to do anyway. I'll pull that plate up and slide some foil underneath it with the pretty side facing up. Now I have my Spellbinders Glimmer machine. Any of the foiling machines will work, just you need the machine that goes with whatever die cut machine you have, so just check with the manufacturer. I put that all face down onto my Glimmer machine. It's all warmed up and ready. I press that timer button. When the button stops flashing, I know that this is hot and I can take all the platforms out and run it through my die cut machine. So the Glimmer foil machine applies the heat, the die cut machine applies the pressure, and we'll end up with beautiful foiled results. Now to cut this into a nice strip, I'll share one of my favorite tips again. That is to take a piece of scrap cardstock and put it right up against the blade of your trimmer. Slide your piece under that you want to cut and allow it to stick out so that you can see your sentiment nicely and the spacing is just right. Then you drop the blade of your trimmer. That really helps to make sure you get it cut just right. Then you can cut the ends off very quickly and easily, and this will be easy to add to our card. I originally thought I'd use the Sending Christmas Cheer, but when I put that on our ornament, I felt like it covered too much of the stitching, so I chose to cut off the word sending and just have the message Christmas Cheer, and I thought that fit nicely at the center of our ornament. Okay, so let's look at the completed card. It flattens to fit in a 5x7 envelope, and watch this. Immediately upon taking it out, those pop-up features kind of pop up at the top and the bottom of the card so that you can easily stand it up on display. Now, I do write a personal message on the back of the card, but if you prefer, you could glue a card to the back, but I think this works really well. I did finish off the ornament by adding some silver gemstones, which match nicely with the silver glitter cardstock strips that's on the display piece. Now, when I stand up the card, you can see how this pops up. It looks kind of like an accordion fold on the sides. Well, if you assembled this as Spellbinders recommends on their website, you get something that looks like this. Now, I'm not going to go through the process because it's all in their video on their website, but you can see how it looks from the top and the bottom. It is more dimensional when you do it this way. The die set also includes these supports that you can put on the side. Now you can add those as decoration, but I found you don't need these supports if you put those two pieces of cardstock on the back, which makes the display card strong enough. You can assemble it any way that you want, either how I did or how they show. It doesn't matter at all. This one I think is good if you're going to give this to the recipient by hand. I wanted something that would fit into a 5x7 envelope, but I love that you have the option of doing either. I enjoyed putting that together so much that I did a second, and I'll just show you some of the different things that I added to it. Off screen, I have already assembled the display card exactly like I showed you before. I used craft colored cardstock, and I put a piece of white cardstock on the back for extra support. I've cut 2 additional of those rectangle pieces with the arch cut at the center, and I'm cutting along the inside score lines. This is so I can create decorative pieces to put on the front of our display card. I have 2 pieces here. I'm just holding them together to cut them both at once. And I thought it'd be fun to do some foiling on this. So I have a hot foil plate here. I'll show you the set it's from in a moment. And you could either arrange it so it kind of goes around that arch, but I thought it'd be fun to cover the entire piece. I'm cutting a piece of my favorite gold foil, and I thought I'd show you, this is how I store my foil. I have hair ties that I put around the foil. I found that it doesn't leave marks. I'm just kind of gentle when I put it on and when I take it off, and it keeps it from unraveling, and it's worked really well for me. And I'll link to the hair ties I use below, but any hair tie would work. I did try regular rubber bands once, and that was a hassle. A hair tie is definitely better. So I have that hot foil plate covering half of one of those craft cardstock pieces, and I'm using a piece of tape to create a hinge. I find creating a hinge is the easiest way to do foiling. I slide my foil underneath the foil plate, making sure that the pretty side of the foil touches the plate, and then I'll trim off the excess. I didn't do a good job at trimming this beforehand, but that's okay. These little pieces I cut off, I save for sentiments that I foil, so like the blue one I did earlier. Now, while that is heating up, I thought I'd show you the rest of the hot foil and die set that I'm using here. So I'm using the hot foil plate right now, and there is a coordinating die for it. And there are hot foil plate sentiments and dies for that. So this includes the foil plates and the dies. All right, so now that the timer is done on my Glimmer machine, I'll take all of those plates out and run it through my die cut machine to apply the pressure. I gotta tell you, that gold foil on that craft cardstock is amazing. So now half of this is foiled. You could leave it as is, but I'll repeat the process to cover the rest of that piece. I just wanted it all foiled. So I'm creating a little hinge, putting some foil underneath it, and doing the same process of running that through our Glimmer machine and our foil machine. After foiling the complete piece, I did the same for the second piece, and we can glue these to the front of the pop-up features on our card. I really like how that gold shines on that craft cardstock. The die set that I used to create these ornament display cards also includes some elements that you can use to decorate. So I created these little holly leaves, pine branches, and poinsettia to add to the top and the bottom of our card. These elements could also be used for other cards and can be used to decorate the ornament. I like how these 2 ornament cards will have very different looks based on the colors I used and how I decorated them. Off screen, I created a red stitched ornament, and remember, I'll show more about stitching at the end of this video if you're interested. Here I've cut a solid ornament and I'm gluing it to the back for a nice finished look. By the way, the Noel die cut that I have on my ornament is from this month's Spellbinders Card Kit of the Month. Their card kits have a lot in it: cardstock, pattern paper, ephemera, usually stickers, a stamp set, and a die set. Here's the die set in this month's kit. I used the Noel die for this ornament. I think that Santa's super cute, and he'd be fun dangling inside of this display card too. Unlike my last card, I thought it'd be fun if I turned my stitched ornament into something that can be removed from the display card and hung on a tree. So I have some gold thread here, and I'm looping it through the top of the ornament. After I've looped it through, I'll tie it in a knot so that we just have a loop of gold thread at the top that the person could hang on their tree. If you wanted to, you could do 2 stitched ornaments and glue them back to back so both sides have stitching if the person's going to put it on their tree. Once again, I'm using a piece of Scotch tape to tape this inside of our card. But this time, because I use string on this, I will write a message on the card, on the back of it, saying that the person can remove the ornament so that you can put it on a tree. I think it's nice that the recipient has the option of leaving it on display like this, or adding it to their tree. One of the other advantages of using a string here is that it swings and moves a lot more when it's in the display card. So let's look at the completed card. It fits nicely into a 5x7 envelope, and when you take it out, you can easily stand it up on display, and you can see that ornament swinging around. If you want a stronger display card that kind of pops up more, definitely assemble it how Spellbinders showed, but this one's nice because it flattens to go in an envelope. Here you can see that foil on the craft, I love that, and our little arranged die cuts. I also added red pearl berries. On my ornament, I used some metallic floss, which I'll show you later, and some gold and red gemstones. Here you can see that this card easily flattens down to fit into the envelope. This is the kind of card that is really fun to create and really fun to give to a special recipient. Since I liked that stitched ornament so much, I thought I'd make a regular card using it. So I have a pink note card. I used the same embossing folder on the background of it, and I created an ornament, just like I showed before, but this time I'm gluing it directly on the front of my note card. By the way, this card is 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. You could do a version of this card where the ornament is removable to use as a keepsake. I will link to a video that shares ideas for that. Here, I just glued it to the front. Now, I did add a bow to the top of my ornament using the Spellbinders die set. I use this one a lot for little doodads to add to different holiday cards, and in this case, we're using the bow die. I added the bow to the top of the ornament. I also have a sentiment that I added. It is white hot foiled. Yes, they have white foil, and I used the same foil sentiment set that I showed you earlier. I did add some yellow pearls and white pearls here and there on the ornament just for a little extra shine. Now, since the cardstock I used to create this note card was a little lighter weight, it was like only 80 pounds, I did add white cardstock inserts to the inside to give it some strength. Nothing is worse than a flimsy note card. You want something that stands nice on display. And here you can see the details on that ornament. It's really fun to create these. This has very little stitching to it, so it doesn't take too long. If you are interested in learning about stitching, I'm going to show a little bit here, but I do recommend catching one of my stitching videos. I'll link to a playlist up here on the top right. But right now I thought I would just show you some basics for stitching cards, some simple stitching, and then another example at the end of this video. For threads, I've really been liking using metallic thread lately. These are 4 that I use quite often. I will link to them below if you're interested. There are also some holiday colors, but I even use this white and black all year round. I just bought some spare rolls for when I run out. You can see some of the red metallic stitching here on this ornament behind the word Noel. It just adds some fun to it. However, you can definitely use regular floss or thread or string, whatever you want to call it, for your stitching. If you're new to this, I do recommend these 6-ply floss packs that Spellbinders has. There are a few different packs. I really like these 2 bright ones. I used these for all of today's examples. They even have a pack of the type that changes colors as you stitch, so that's another option. So let's do some basic stitching here. Again, I have a more thorough video, a few of them actually, and I'll link to that playlist at the top right. But all I'm doing here is pulling out one of the 6-ply strings of the DMC floss. Now this has 6 plies to it, and I like to pull 1 ply out at a time, just so that they're not twisted together. So I just grab a hold of one of the ply and pull the rest away. Here I'm pulling out 3 ply. I usually like to stitch with 3 ply when I'm using Spellbinders die cuts as I am today. So I have 3 plies put together here. I'll put it through the hole of the needle, and I will link to the needles that I use below also. And I'll pull it so I have 1 short tail and 1 long tail. This is just a good basic way to do stitching, but no, there are many ways to do this. All right, so now I have an ornament here that I die cut earlier, and I'm just going to do a few stitches on here just to show you how to get started. There are also many ways to start and end your stitching, but one way I think is really good for beginners, and I still use quite often, is to tape your ends. So I'm going to feed my needle through the back, through one of the holes, and then tape this little end onto one of the solid areas of the paper. And that way I have this held here. I don't have to worry about tying knots or anything else. This just works really well. All right, so I'll just trim off this excess here, and now we can start stitching. I normally go up through the center, which we've already done, and then I go to one of the outside holes. The nice thing about Spellbinders dies is the dies make little impressions, little line impressions, so you can follow those when you do your stitching. Most of these stitching dies just involve coming up a center hole and then going down an outside hole and doing that over and over again. So you can see how I'm just going right around this little diamond shape, repeating that stitching. This is something that I like to take on the road with me. I take it to my son's baseball games. I take it when I travel. I do this while I'm watching TV at night. It's very therapeutic and something that I enjoy. I know it's not for everyone, so do know you could use these dies without doing any of the stitching. You could allow just a bright color cardstock to show through those holes or add gems on them. Now here I am at the end of this thread, so I'll just feed it through the stitching I've already done on the back, cut that off, and then you can put a piece of tape if you really want to be sure it stays secure. But remember, I'm going to glue something on the back of this ornament when I'm done, which will also help to keep things secure. And there you can see that simple stitching. So I would just continue to do all the stitching on this piece and maybe do a second and glue them back to back. And then this is a great keepsake to give to someone. So many ways you can use these type of dies. I think they look limiting at first, but there are so many different ways to use. Okay, I have one more card, a bonus card, that uses a different stitching die set, but this background is so much fun to do, and unfortunately I found out this die set is a limited time thing only, so I wanted to share it with you before I went off and did a lot of stitching with it. This is the layered stitched diamond die set. You get all the pieces you see here, including that rectangle die with faux stitching on the inside, so you can mix and match these pieces together. There's also a stamp set where the sentiments fit into that diamond area at the center. I didn't use this stamp set today, but do know that's available, and these are sold separately. Now this die set is fantastic because once again, the die makes impressions showing you where to stitch, and you can either just do the background like this die, or you have these other little pieces you can add to the center. Now here I did some basic stitching on it using some of the 6-ply DMC floss that I showed you earlier and some of the metallic thread that I showed you earlier. And I just did this stitching on the background itself. It's 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. I also did basic stitching on the other die cut pieces. These dies are included in the set, and glued those into the open areas on the background, but you could leave them off if you wanted to. The best part about this particular die set, and what I'm most excited about, is it can be used for a variety of occasions. I'm making a holiday card here, but you could put any sentiment you want in the middle. So do all your die cutting, do all of your stitching on the road while watching a movie, then come back and add a sentiment and you're good to go. I chose to use the new Spellbinders Joyful Christmas Sentiment hot foil plates and dies that come together. These are from Simon Hurley. I really like the style of them. You foil that one plate with all the greetings, then you die cut that one die and it cuts them all out quickly. So you're able to create 5 sentiments without too much effort. If you like the look of those sentiments but don't have a foil machine, you could use the Ranger Halftone Holiday Stamp Set. This has similar sentiments and there is a coordinating die set available. I just wanted to show you there was an option. I also think it's good to remember that there are other products out there. If you see folks foiling in videos and that's not your thing, there are usually stamps that can be used with maybe heat embossing for a similar look. All right, now here is the card that I created. I did trim my stitch background down a little bit and added it to a white note card that is 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. I also added some gemstones along the stitching for additional shine. I have company coming this weekend, so I plan to do a bunch of stitching, and I'll share those on my stories over on Instagram if you're interested in seeing the other color combinations I come up with. And I hope you enjoyed this video. I know it's not my normal technique video, but rather me just taking some products I wanted to use and having fun creating. After all, I think a big part of the joy of card making is using the products that we have and creating something in the style that we like most. So if you're interested in what I used today, I have it linked in my YouTube description below. And I will link to a playlist for stitch cards here at the end and a video where I show how to create an ornament card where you can remove the ornament for a keepsake. Thank you for spending this time with me. Have a great week, and I'll see you soon.